Coming up on show 905, China's plan for fully electric EV public transport. Stick around, I'll tell you more. Plus, on the podcast today, why Tesla are making your Sentry mode footage even more secure, LG Chem target a profit through EV batteries, and plug-in electric car sales in France are going through the roof. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening around the world. Welcome to EV News Daily, your edition for Monday, 12th of October. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story so you don't have to. A reminder to anyone in my British listeners, if you are listening and you are thinking about changing, or you've thought about sometime changing your energy provider, there's that Octopus link, which I've mentioned a couple of times. I'll mention it once again at the end of the show today, so stick around for that, because it can get you a free £100 if you do it by the 15th this month, and I get a little kickback on it as well to help fund this podcast. So we'll kick off the news today with just a quick tip for a YouTube video that you might want to watch. Nico Rosberg has been driving the VW ID.R, and the description in the video says, "Here's my hot lap surprise for you." Racing the VW ID.R at the Nürburgring F1 track before the 2020 Eifel Grand Prix. I'm looking forward to your feedback on my hot lap video in this electric missile, is how he describes it. And here's a quick clip of before he drives the VW ID.4, which of course has done Pikes Peak and got the Goodwood record and more as well, the Nordschleife record. Here is him talking to Romain Dumas, the test driver for the Volkswagen and the race driver for the Volkswagen ID.R, before Nico Rosberg, remember, a Formula One world champion, sounds a little bit nervous about getting in.
Let's talk about weight. So 1,100 including a driver.
Exactly, yeah, for sure. You know, at the end of the day, the car was developed only for Pikes Peak, for 20 kilometer run. Yeah. So right now we are a little bit more than 1 ton, exactly. Yeah. But the power are so huge, and you have no gears also. Yeah. So you will see all these things. The good point of the electric car, for sure, a big advantage when you are driving.
I mean, the thing is a beast. I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to watch it. It's just it's just amazing. On a wet Nürburgring track where it just looks such a handful to drive. Amazing. Awesome. Go watch it if you're interested in that. So in the news today, LG Chem are forecasting a record third quarter profit. South Korea's LG Chem, which is the EV battery supplier for Tesla and a petrochemicals maker as well, said today its third quarter profit is going to jump to a record high, according to analysts that attribute that success partly to Tesla as well. LG Chem, along with China's CATL, supplies batteries for Tesla's EVs made in Shanghai. The made in China Model 3 is, of course, using the new lithium iron phosphate, at least the standard range plus model is, of those, which are cheaper to produce, less range, less energy dense, but if you don't need the range, you can save some money, and that's what CATL are providing. Not exactly sure what LG Chem are. That's one to look into for me, but I know that Tesla now have their partnership with them as well. Tesla posted record quarterly deliveries in the third quarter. Analysts are expecting LG Chem's battery business to remain profitable in the third quarter. Their petrochemicals business will also give them good profits, they say, and Tesla's long-term plan to make their own cells did hurt shares of battery cell makers like LG Chem, which have been rallying earlier this year because of EV expectations. But it's interesting that Elon Musk did Battery Day and said, we not only want to keep all of our relationships going, but we also want to get more cells from the people that we currently buy them from. And the stock price went down. Yes, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Tesla is next in the news, updating the Sentry mode and Tesla Cam storage. Safekeeping in the glove box. Tesla is updating the interior of the Model 3. You may have heard about this on the podcast recently. To let owners lock their Sentry mode and Tesla Cam storage devices now safely away in the glove box. So rather than plugging in the USB device or a storage device where thieves can easily just reach down and grab it, it will now be tucked and locked safely away in the glove box. Tesla owners have to plug a storage device into one of the USB ports in the center console, and footage then recorded by Sentry Mode and Tesla Cam, which is their dash cam features, are stored on it. It says Electrek. Now, we're learning that Tesla is introducing a new solution with the redesigned interior. So that redesigned center console in the Model 3 with the wireless charging to put your phone down on doesn't have quite the same room for the USB sockets. And so by the look of it, Tesla are updating the glove box so that you can, there is now a USB port inside the glove box at the top left corner of it, according to a picture seen by Electrek. The new port is going to connect directly to Tesla's MCU and enable Tesla owners to plug in a storage device to store that footage that they are recording. And also, remember that, I guess, if a thief really wants to take along the tools needed to break into the glove box, they could, but it's just one extra step rather than them just reaching down and grabbing their storage device and then, you being left without it. Of course, the glove box can only be opened by the touchscreen, or actually I suppose voice commands as well now I think about it out loud, but mainly there's now a PIN entry feature, so you enter your PIN number to open the glove box, and I guess you'd have to break into it. It's not the most secure place, but it's just that one extra step that could deter a thief, or at least those that don't know about it. And let's face it, some of them are not exactly the sharpest tool in the box. They would incriminate themselves. So let's move on. The Pan-American electric vehicle road trip is now possible thanks to a energy company, a charging company called NLX, and also an Apple streaming show. EV drivers now have a way to drive from North America all the way down to southern Argentina. NLX, the Italian company, recently installed 220 of their Juicebox charging points in 11 South and Central American countries, places like Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru. According to Car and Driver website today, the new charging corridor takes EV drivers along the Andes Mountains and allowing them to follow along what is a 13,000-mile route, and it's the one that actor Ewan McGregor and Charlie Borman did on their electric motorcycles for the new Apple TV Plus series. It's called Long Way Up, if you haven't seen it, and I haven't got Apple TV Plus, but I think I get it with something that I've bought from Apple anyway. The two men drove the electric Harley-Davidson bikes from Ushuaia, is that how I say it? To Los Angeles. And NLX's Pan-American charging corridor is featured in the documentary program. While Livewire electric motorcycles, the first Harley-Davidson electric motorcycle we used, and the stars of the show, really, the film crew had to go along as well. So what did they choose? They chose Rivians, which is interesting because you can't actually buy one at the moment, and so a brilliant collaboration there by the look of it, with the Rivian pickup trucks making the entire operation a test bed for new EVs. All right, moving on. Let's talk France. Plug-in electric car sales doubling in France in September. More than 1 in 10 new passenger cars in France was indeed a plug-in. Now, despite the overall passenger car sales market in France going down, not much, a few percent in September, the plug-in electric car segment grew significantly to one of its highest results ever. The total number of registrations more than doubled, and it was 18,588. That is a 207% year-over-year increase. Well, passenger cars noted a market share of 10.6% for plug-in passenger cars. According to Inside EVs, what are the most popular models? Well, the Renault Zoe, once again in September, smashing it in France. Of course, its domestic market, not surprising. 2,900 almost Zoes were sold last month in September, about 26,000 year to date. The next two best were the Peugeot E208, another domestic model. The Model 3 from Tesla, doing well, about 1,000 of those sold. And in fourth, we have a new entrant onto the list, despite only being on sale for half the month, maybe, not even that. The Volkswagen ID.3. Well, there you go. Not quite a super September, not smashing it in number one, but 616 of those were indeed delivered. Brilliant news. All right, moving on. And Daimler are next in the news. Their Labour chief is urging the European lawmakers to promote EV charging so that everybody can drive an EV. And he wants the EU lawmakers to aggressively target charging infrastructure. The Daimler Labour boss is Michael Brecht. And according to Automotive News Europe, overall demand for cars could suffer if ownership of electric vehicles is not made more attractive with readily available charging networks. Daimler says. Brecht and Daimler have reviewed their strategy to free up resources. They're retooling their factories and they're retaining workers and they're building low emissions cars instead, but they also want the charging issue sorted. Worth saying as well that, when Tesla looked around and went, oh, no one's going to build a network for us, we'll do it ourselves. We are in a different, this is different to 10 years ago. You can't have each car maker, well, they can't afford it. And they can't also make the transition to electric and build networks. And we wouldn't want it. We wouldn't want to have all these different charging networks like, oh, you're on the Volvo one, the BMW one, the Tesla one. We do want interoperability and we want lots of fast charging wherever we can or wherever we need it. We don't need more Tesla supercharging networks from the individual car makers themselves, but equally, you can't just look at legislators and policymakers and say, you sort it out. At some point, you've got to. And that's why, Ionity is a collaboration of car makers and more as well. People coming together to say, look, let's sort this out together. It's not just one person's or one group's responsibility. In China, where there are the most charging sockets or poles, as they call it, piles they call it. Yeah, they call them charging piles. Interesting translation. There's more piles in China than anywhere else in the world. China last Friday passed a new plan for the NEV industry. NEV is what they call new energy vehicles, so plug-in cars and hydrogen's in there, but there's none of those. To foster a new growth area of green development, according to a statement issued by the State Council Executive, according to CGTN website, starting from next year, at least 80%, so 4 out of 5 vehicles operating in public transport, taxis, logistics vehicles, in the areas of, and I'm obviously going to butcher these names, Fujian, Jiangxi, Guizhou, and Hainan, they need to be new energy vehicles. 80%. 4 out of 5. That is how you do policy and move the needle. Is everybody watching? Please. Staying in China, and Xpeng, or Xiaopeng, however, I don't know how I say that car maker's name, scores record deliveries last month. September deliveries were about 3,500, a new record for the company, about 8,500 for the quarter. They have the sedan, the P7, dominating the sales, about 2,500 sold, and the small crossover / SUV, which is the G3, says Zach at Cleantechnica. Targeting production of 40,000 vehicles a year is still pretty niche. I mean, it's about what Tesla were doing when they were just making the S and the X. However, Xpeng is quickly working to go beyond that and become a much bigger player. And of course, talking about selling cars in Europe as well. But so many of these, Chinese car makers, to look for a better phrase, have got enough problems in their own backyard to be selling cars in Europe and the US, but some of them are as well. So that's Xpeng doing that with the P7, and good luck to them, but a big job to do in their home market. Staying in China, BYD sales are up in September. The leading Chinese maker of new energy vehicles reported strong sales, bit of a rebound in September. Company data has been showing from a filing that they made about 20,000 NEVs were made last month in September. That is up year on year and up month on month, according to the China Daily website. In the period of the year going from January to September, BYD have sold over 110,000 new energy vehicles. And that is down on the yearly total of last year. So we're still in a bit of an EV dip in China, but it is recovering. So it was down 49%, it's down 42% now, and we'll see if it's a strong end to the year. Hopefully they can pull that back. Electric car sales are doing well in Europe because of CO2 rules, says this article. 1 in 10 new cars sold across Europe is going to have a plug socket on. That is triple last year's sales levels after car makers launched new models, according to the the rules which are made by the EU, these are all to do with CO2. The market share for most electric cars is going to be 15% next year, according to the group Transport and Environment, and the Financial Times saying that according to the new CO2 rules, car makers must reduce the average emissions of their vehicles to 95 grams of CO2 per kilometre, or they face fines, or they can pool with other car makers who have sold more EVs than they need, and they can buy some credits off them. In the first 6 months of the year, average emissions across all car sales went down from 122 grams to 111 grams, but not quite at that 95 grams of CO2 per kilometre level. It is still the biggest drop in 6 months in more than a decade. Toyota are doing pretty well. They partner with Mazda. They've got their no such thing as a self-charging hybrids, and because of that, they're bringing their emissions levels down to where they need them to be. BMW have some plug-in hybrids, things like the i3. They're meeting their targets. Renault are meeting their targets thanks to the Zoe. And the Leaf has done good business for their sister company, Nissan, as well. All right, I'll pop a link to Financial Times in the show notes if you would like to read more. Amazon and Panasonic are betting on battery recycling. JB Straubel, a former CTO of Tesla, might have an understated delivery about him, but that obfuscates these ambitions and plans for his new company since he left Tesla, or stepped away from Tesla, I should say. Redwood Materials is JB's company, and it's a recycling startup. He co-founded it in 2017, and he envisions actively working to make Redwood one of the world's leading recycling companies for EV batteries. According to TechCrunch, the company has a business-to-business strategy at the moment. In other words, they're not going to have some sort of, battery return, pot at your local supermarket where you can go and put your old mobile phone. It's aimed at businesses at the moment, but they'll recycle scrap from cell production, which is important, and consumer electronics like cell phone, batteries, laptops, power tools, power banks, scooters, and electric bicycles. Redwood collects the scrap from consumer electronics companies and battery cell makers like Panasonic, and they process them, and they extract the cobalt, the nickel, the lithium, things that are typically mined, and then they supply them back to Panasonic, and a partnership with Amazon as well could mean something like a Rivian deal. Obviously, there's the Tesla connection. They are going to be car maker agnostic. They're not going to do a deal that prohibits them working with every car maker. Of course, batteries do last a long time. So after they're finished being used in cars, they can be used in other second life and third life. So that it's not like your car's going to, when it ends its life, have to go off to be recycled. Many of them can be reused, but that whole cycle is becoming increasingly important in terms of cell production and ensuring that there's less waste in cell production, and that when batteries aren't being used at the end of the life of the car, that there is a clear path to how they will be recycled. I did have a quote here from JB Straubel that I found, and he said, and I quote, "As the world electrifies transportation, it needs so many different materials, and the supply chain upstream of the factory is often underappreciated. The Gigafactory, Tesla's Gigafactory, is a little bit like an iceberg. There's so much of it that's kind of below the surface in the suppliers and in the mines and the refineries and all the different things that need to be fed into it that you don't typically see." All right, is that TechCrunch story that I'll pop a link to in the show notes. And while we're talking mining today, I saw this story pop up on my feed. Mining companies have descended on Chile to meet the demands of everything from EV batteries to phone batteries. But the environmental damage of the extraction process is very water heavy, and it's a serious issue. Salt flat extraction is what we're talking about here in terms of lithium mining. It's comparatively non-destructive to the landscape on a surface level, but it does require huge quantities of water to be pumped in from elsewhere or up from the groundwater supplies, and that is evaporated in pools to extract the lithium. But it removes it from the local ecosystem. According to The Drive, the tension between needing lithium to mitigate climate change and actually causing climate change by desertifying a region it'd be ironic if it wasn't horrific and horrible to talk about. I'll pop a link if you want to read more about that story in the show notes. And that's your podcast for today. Thank you for listening. Once again, a reminder, by the way, that if you want to support the podcast, you can do by making the decision to use the Octopus Energy link that I have in the show notes, on Twitter, pinned at the top of Facebook, in the YouTube show notes. If you're thinking of changing your electricity provider, if you're in GB, then consider Octopus. It's 100% green. I'm with them, and I've never mentioned this in the 6 months I've been with them, but until the 15th of October, you get £100 free bonus on your account just for switching to them. And it takes 2 minutes. You do it on your phone or your laptop or your tablet. In literally, call up the website. Well, follow the link that I'll give you. Has to be through my link. Then I get a little kickback as well, 50 quid to support this podcast. And it's literally name and details, and they take it from there with your existing energy supplier and that communication process that goes on. You don't do anything. So I'll invite you to use that link if you want to change over to Octopus. Do it before the 15th to get the £100. It's worth doing it as soon as you can. There are 903 previous episodes. No, 904 previous shows online if you want to check out the blog at tvnewsdaily.com. Thank you to my premium partners online. That is Phil Roberts of Electric Future. Thank you, Phil. Also, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Porsche of the Village in Cincinnati, Audi of Cincinnati East, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East, NationalCarCharging.com and AlohaCharge.com. Also, Derek Riley and his EV Review Island YouTube channel, Richard at rsimons.co.uk, the electric vehicle specialist if you're looking to buy yourself a used EV. Check them out. Have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And remember, there is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.